which we inhabit and the culture that we've been conditioned, that's how collaboration, communication and thinking occurs. So we're in a time now of circulating flesh, where we can take organs from one body and insert them into another body, where we can take the hand from a dead body and stitch it to the arm of an amputee. I met the first double hand transplant in a medical conference in Paris about 15, 16, 17 years ago, I'm not sure exactly when, but only after 6 months he could move his cadaver fingers. He had a rudimentary sense of pressure, temperature and touch. So we're now exchanging body parts. We're exchanging our bodily organs. Our body parts are becoming commodified. But we're also in a time of fractal flesh, where bodies and bits of bodies, spatially separated but electronically connected, generate recurring patterns of interactivity at varying scales. And that's just simply a description of the internet. And it's also a time of phantom flesh, where the body now experiences itself increasingly as its phantom, as its digital doppelganger. By phantom, I don't mean phantom as in phantasmagoria, but phantom as in phantom limb. We begin to have force feedback of our phantoms. So to others online, the body appears flickering on and off as digital noise, as a kind of glitch in our biological and evolutionary time. We can instantly now produce a skin, a hyperreal skin, by scanning your face. We can map our coordinates on the skin and we can animate the skin. In fact, at the level of a screen, we will not be able to discern whether the face at the other end is a face of an actual person or a face of an animated avatar. So the body now increasingly oscillates between its physical form and its online phantom. And it's this oscillation that is quickening, coupled with the optical thickening, that fuses the physical and the phantom. In other words, we're constantly performing in mixed realities. We're biological bodies, but augmented, amplified, extended by instruments and machines, but also managing data streams in virtual systems. And we're sliding between these modes of operation, so much so that our phantoms and our physical form are fused.
Okay, so here's baby X, and this is, she's been learning to read words. So here's her first word in the book. So let's see what she can see. It's on her page. And here we go, let's see what she... What's this, baby? What's this? What's this? What's this? Good girl. Now see if she knows what the word is. Okay, baby, look over here. Okay, what's this? What's this? Good girl. Let's try on something else. Okay? Okay, what's this? Baby, over here, what's this? Baby, look at me, what's this? Baby, over here. Good girl. Well, that's what she's just reading. That's just for a picture.
So with this high fidelity 3D modelling, with adequate morph targets for facial expressions and speaking phonemes, with the mapping of sort of curiosity and awareness behaviour, a combination of cognitive sciences and neurophysiology. Effectively here, you're teaching an avatar baby to learn as you would any human child. This is the work of Mark Sagar at the University of Auckland. In 1993, as well as the idea of technology attached to my body, I decided to design a sculpture for the inside of my body, for the inside of my stomach. When this sculpture fully closes, it's a capsule structure that can be inserted into my stomach, down my esophagus. But when it's fully opened, the sculpture opens and closes, extends and retracts, has a flashing light and a beeping sound. So you have to imagine this as a machine choreography that is occurring in a soft body in the stomach. And the stomach is inflated with air to make it safe to insert into it. It was very difficult to document the sculpture opening and closing because of all of the stomach fluids that are produced when something is inside your stomach is trying to dissolve it. Hence, I'm using stainless steel, gold and silver, as well as a special form of acrylic to engineer this sculpture and to insert it into the stomach. It took 2 days and 6 insertions to film about 15 minutes of video. Not very comfortable because your body wants to expel the object, and so in fact I had to be in a clinic overnight because of the trauma suffered by the body. A project with another artist, Nina Sellers, collaboration where both artists underwent liposuction to extract 4.6 litres of their biomaterial. And this material was inserted into an installation titled Blender. This is the kind of inverse to the stomach sculpture. Instead of a machine choreography inside a soft body, here a machine installation becomes the host for a liquid body composed of biomaterial from 2 artists' bodies, anthropomorphic in scale, about the height of the artist. And if you approach this installation, there are proximity sensors that activate the blender blades, mixing the biomaterial and frightening you with the sounds that it was making. In this project, we scanned my head, we scanned a hominid skull. I did a digital transplant of the human face over the hominid skull. That data was then used for 3D printing a scaffold, a 3-dimensional scaffold, and a layer of living skin was grown over this scaffold. So this was a kind of partial head, a partially living portrait of the artist, which was part human and part hominid. Originally, the extra ear was imaged as an ear on the side of my head, but this was not a very intelligent place to put an extra ear. Because of the nerve endings coming out of into the face in this area, no surgeon would help me do this. They were afraid that what would happen would be partial face paralysis. But in 2006, with the assistance of 3 surgeons from the United States, we began the first surgical procedures for the ear on my arm. The arm was a safe place to construct the ear. When the scaffold, which was a porous a biopolymer scaffold, when is it inserted into the skin? And the skin is suctioned over the scaffold. Over a period of 6 months, you have tissue ingrowth and vascularization occurring. So the ear becomes physically a part of your body. You can have a closer look later, but this ear is only a relief of an ear. Last year I had an additional surgery which was unsuccessful. This is not a project that is easily achieved. But the idea here is not simply to replicate an ear and relocate it to my arm. Rather, the idea is to internet enable the ear. At the end of this surgery, we've inserted a small microphone inside the ear construct. Even with my arm wrapped in bandage, even with a partial plaster cast, the surgeon has a face mask, but his voice is still picked up and wirelessly transmitted. So imagine in the future, you might be here in Sophia, I'm in Melbourne, London, wherever I am, wherever you are, you'll be able to log in and listen to what my ear is hearing. So this ear is not for me. I've got 2 good ears to hear with. In fact, when I showed this ear to my 2-year-old niece, I was very pleased because she recognised it was an ear, because what she wanted to do was she grabbed my head, turned it to see if this one slipped off. But this generated other related projects. So a 4-metre-long sculpture of the ear on my arm, and a performance in the Biennale in Australia, lying on the sculpture. Here my body is covered with white clay, white slip, because it was very cold, because my body was very warm. The clay skin cracks, producing this kind of very primeval image. And this performance was a kind of counterpoint in scale of a whole physical body with an ear on its arm, lying on a much larger fragment of the body, which was the large arm. But whilst I was lying on that sculpture, I thought what would be really interesting would be to suspend my body above the sculpture. So we inserted 16 hooks into the skin. The hooks were rigged to the hoist, and when everything was ready, the body was hoisted up. When the cable takes the full weight of the body, because the cable is braided, the cable begins to untwist. And as the cable untwists, the body begins to spin. I knew that this was going to happen, but I thought the spinning would be for about 5 minutes. The spinning actually went for about 15 minutes. This performance began when the body was hoisted off the sculpture, and it ended when the body was lowered down. So this project was one done in 2012, 25 years after my previous body suspension in Japan. Here the body can be precisely programmed. Its trajectory, velocity and position orientation is precisely mapped, and this performance, the sound is very important, so I'll switch back the sound for a moment. So when the body finished its choreography, it was replaced by a large sculpture of the artist's ear, and the ear performs exactly the same choreography. What's interesting is that the robot that choreographs the ear is the same robot that carved the ear. The robot was also the machine, the CNC machine that carved the sculpture. So we're increasingly now coupled and complicit with technology. The body becomes this extended operational system of bodily metabolism and machine musculature. So for me, there was always a ghost in the machine, but not as a vital force that animates, but rather a fading attestation of the human. Stickman was a minimal but full body exoskeleton. So in this performance, the body is algorithmically actuated by the computer program. I don't know which movements it's going to generate, which combinations of sequences, 64 possible different combinations are possible. But in the performance that I'm going to show, we also engineered a mini stickman, a smaller stickman, where the audience, by manipulating the limbs of the mini stickman, they could insert their own choreography inside the performance. This performance was for 5 hours continuously. One leg was free to balance on, right? So my 2 arms and 1 leg were programmed. One leg was free, but that meant I could pivot and change my shadow, and I could modulate the video feedback. So although the body was largely controlled in its movements, it could manipulate and modulate its shadow and the video feedback. And this performance now has been done several times, the last time in Canada several months ago. So, 3 ideas that are very important, that I think are very important. Actor network theory, Bruno Latour, and object-oriented ontology, Graham Harman. These are both flattened ontologies that don't preface the human. In other words, humans and non-humans and objects are treated equally in an interactive system. But actor network theory emphasises the relationships that are generated in the network. So in a sense, your qualities, your capabilities are the result of your interaction in the network. Graham Harman, though, emphasises more the nature of an object. He says that you can't really understand an object by reducing it to its component parts, nor can you evaluate it from its effects or its relations, which is really interesting. And an object withdraws from other objects and humans. It's not an object in a Heideggerian sense, which is ready at hand. And the Internet of Things. Now, objects have embedded circuitry, which means that objects can be online, can communicate with other objects and other people. In other words, objects are becoming smarter. Rewired, remixed, and this is the exoskeleton arm for this project. It's an 11 degree of freedom manipulator, individual finger movements, wrist, elbow and shoulder movements. And in the Rewired Remix performance, I'm wearing this exoskeleton arm. This performance is for 5 days, 6 hours every day. I could only see with the eyes of someone in London, whilst I could only hear with the ears of someone in New York, but anyone anywhere could access my right arm and remotely activate it. So it's kind of like outsourcing your visual and acoustical senses and sort of distributing your agency. The performance that I'm going to show is only 4 days, 5 hours every day. It was done within Europe, so we could do the video streaming live.
Brauchen insbesondere einen Schutz sodass bei 15 bis 18 Grad Mikrofon. Auf der Hitze. Vielleicht zum Schluss noch zu Ihrer Frage, wie unbedingt Referenzen.
Ganz fest, ja. 1-1.
I never knew what was going to happen next, what I was going to see, what I was going to hear, the combinations, and of course I didn't expect when someone was going to manipulate my arm. In the first Rewired performance, there were 300 interactions in the gallery every day and over 1,200 online interactions. So 1,500 movements of my arm every day, but to be honest, it was better that I was moving than when I was just static. So in this age of mixed realities, the body performs beyond the boundaries of its skin and beyond the local space that it occupies. It's extruded into non-places and task envelopes of virtuality. So in the Rewired Performance, I was mostly in a virtual space with my vision and hearing, but whenever anyone manipulated my arm and threw me off balance, then the physical grounding of the body reoccurs. So it was this sort of sliding between the actual and the virtual. Now we know that we can print, 3D print with living cells, and soon, in the next 50 years or so, we'll be able to 3D print complex parts of the body and perhaps even organs. If we can 3D print body parts, if we can stem cell grow body parts, then it'll be a time of an excess of organs awaiting bodies, of organs without bodies. In 2011, in Houston, the first twin turbine artificial heart was inserted into the chest of a terminally ill patient. He lived long enough for them to test this artificial heart. This is a more robust, more reliable artificial heart than previously, but what's interesting is that it circulates the blood without pulsing. So, in the near future, you might rest your head on your loved one's chest. They're warm to the touch, they're breathing, they're speaking, they're certainly alive, they have no heartbeat. So the possibility of having populations of humans prosthetically augmented, but also without the normal bodily rhythms that animate us, will be interesting. So what's happening now, in kind of summary? The dead, the near dead, the brain dead, the yet to be born, the partially living, the prosthetically augmented, the cryogenically preserved, and synthetic life all now share a material and proximal existence with other living bodies, microbial life, operational machines, an executable and viral code. So this is something that is happening at this particular time in our history. The idea that there is a blurring between what is living, what is dead, what is partially a living, what is cryogenically preserved. There was an interesting thing happened in the UK about 6 or 7 years ago, where the first healthy baby was brought to bear, was born from a 50-year-old frozen embryo. Okay, so what does this mean? It means that your twin might be born on your deathbed. It means that your baby might be born after you die. It means that we're disconnecting our reproductive cycle from our individual existence. That's what it means. So, anyway, futures for me should always be contingent and contestable. Futures will not happen of necessity. A singularity may not happen. Machines might not take over. There is too much chance, and we should always interrogate and contest possibilities that are engineered. Thanks very much.